is it good for my government? Not is it good for my country, but for as a governor, as somebody who's in the government making these decisions. Nowadays, the oeuvre is one where if something doesn't align in a way that's strategically advantageous to your politics, you don't want to do it because you want to make sure you have power, and you side with one side over the other because if you have a group of people, if you're in one party, you have a whole bunch of power because you're a collection. And it's so ridiculous that we can't put the interests of our citizens over our own interests when we're in government anymore. Because the point of government is that we need somebody to put the country's interests over their own. And that's what made government. And now it's the opposite. Now the people in government are less likely to put the country's welfare above their own than the average person. And that is one of the few things in America that really disgusts me. Fundamentally, I disagree with it. And it's one of the hardest problems to solve because the only way to solve the problem is to get the American people to vote for someone else. And that's really hard to do.
Well, there's one other option.
What is that?
It's called a revolution. It's in the Bill of Rights.
Yeah.
Equally difficult, maybe even more so, but...
It's an option. There used to be a time, I think, that America was capable of all the responsibilities that it had. Now I think that it's less so. And I think it's possible for it to become a responsible nation once again. But America is such an old democracy. We have a democracy prototype as a functioning government right now. Like we didn't get South Africa's constitution. South Africa's constitution is so many pages and pages and pages long because the rationale is, well, this is the constitution of our country. Of course, we should put as many laws in it as possible to essentially create the federal government because these are all important questions. America, nope, we got a couple of pages. That's
America's belief is to make the Constitution a living document. But how dare you change it?
Right, exactly.
Like, you stay the hell away from that. You saw what Nicolas Cage did in National Treasure. You don't touch it. It's like, your belief is that this document isn't long.
Yeah.
Because how could you possibly know today what the future will need?
Yeah.
And yet, conservatism.
Don't touch anything. Which is not what, I don't think that's what the conservative view should be. You should be willing to change whatever in the world you want about the government. The government isn't the thing you need to be conservative about. It's what the government's serving. You need to be conservative about America. And that means making sure that America sticks to traditional values. And while there's some traditional values that I don't think America should stick to, I think that as the world changes, it makes sense for America to change with it. I also think that the conservative faction of America is the most useful at making sure that through all of our changes, they're all American changes and not European changes or not Chinese changes. I think that the idea of a conservative-liberal interplay is a fascinating one and a necessary one. I am really thankful that we have conservatives and liberals because essentially those come from different perspectives and different priorities. And all of those priorities are, at least to some extent, important and deserve consideration. Problem is, we don't consider them anymore. If you're liberal, you consider the liberal ones, and then you choose, and then all liberals collectively decide to actually think the same thing, even though they don't. And then same thing with the conservatives.
Yeah.
And that's why our liberal party is a Democratic party, and the Republican Party is a conservative party, and there cannot be any change between the two. If you're a liberal in the Republican Party, you're now a Democrat. Or you're an independent, or you're unaffiliated. You can't be a Republican anymore. Lost a really responsive thing in the U.S., and that is our communication. But I actually am very happy with Trump's election, not because I like Trump's election, I hate it, but it's because I hate it I'm very happy with it, because I know that the majority of Americans are not super happy with Trump.
I'm afraid of two things with the Trump administration. One is that he gets done everything he says he's going to get done. The other is that people let him. Because I agree, I was not for Trump by any standard. I was devastated when the election results came in. And I'm not so devastated now. Now, even my like general like ire towards it has turned, like sort of faded.
Mm-hmm.
And that bothers me actually, because it's fading because like, well, no duh, I did something yesterday.
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to read another 6 articles about this today, and like I'm glad I'm reading these articles, but I'm like so desensitized to it. And that is a fantastic issue.
Mm-hmm.
Because if I become desensitized to this as someone who cares, how can I expect anyone who's like, Clinton would have been worse to care? Like the people who truly did believe they were both the same evil, just different colors. Why would they care if I don't? Like, if I stop caring, I can't hold anyone accountable to be caring anymore. And it's because of desensitization, which is also being used in a way to, like, overshadow the things its administration is trying to get passed. It's devious. And if it's on purpose, very brilliant.
Yeah.
That's a question in of itself.
Yes.
Is he doing these things on purpose? And I go back and forth on that as well. I feel like maybe at first it wasn't. But then it started to like play to his advantage. And now it's just like, of course I'm going to keep doing this. Like, you know how it's going to be really an easy way to like not get yelled at about my immigration reform? If I tweet angrily about other things and the media reports on that. So they just don't, like, no one hears about this other thing, or at least not enough people to matter. Sure, the people here will be outraged, but like, you know what they're still outraged about? Mar-a-Lago. So I'm gonna go there again. If that's being done intentionally, like, it's manipulative and it's crafty and it's brilliant. And that's why I'm afraid of him working.
Yeah.
Because, like, again, ideologically, I am opposed to Trump. Mm-hmm. But what I'm really afraid of is that works out so it becomes the okay thing.
Yeah.
Like, this hatred and this vitriol is what scares me. Mm-hmm. Of that being, like, allowed to exist as commonplace in the American culture again. Or any country's culture again, which is becoming an increasing problem across all of the Western world right now.
Yeah.
Like, that concerns me.
Not just the West either. I can't think of a part of the world where it isn't a problem.
True, but the Western world has been more acknowledging of the East as, quote, quote, always having had these problems while we matured out of them. Yes. Which is wrong, because the West never did. We abolished slavery, we can't be racist. Then, 200 years later, we elected a black man president and said, see, now we have a black man president, we can't be racist. But the fact that you're saying that sentence says racism is still alive.
Yeah.
Like, the fact that Obama being elected was notable proves that the problem exists still.
Right.
The fact that Hillary was not elected, basically, because of who she was, and a lot of that happening to be that she was a woman, proves that feminism is necessary. Like, yes, she was not that charismatic. Her policies were good. She stood for things that weren't great, but when confronted and shown that, like, this is not the way things should be, she would get on board, and she would talk to people, and she'd become educated, and she would include that in her strategies. And moving forward, I felt I could trust her to keep her word on those things.
I agree.
That doesn't mean she was a good candidate, but that means that she's a good politician.
Yes. I think that one thing that gets ignored by Hillary Clinton, is that she is the sort of person who talks to people almost for a living.
Yes.
That's amazing, and
Yes.
It doesn't get enough coverage. It didn't when she was First Lady, it didn't when she was a senator, it didn't when she was a presidential candidate either time, and it doesn't today, because I'm sure she's still talking with people.
I'm sure. Though, one thing I feel bad about with Clinton for, off of that as well, but it is so obvious that she wants to be in office.
Yeah.
That is her calling in life, at least so far as she sees it. But realistically speaking, she can maybe never run again.
I honestly don't think, if we assume that Trump does not get elected next time there's a presidential election, Hillary Clinton is not the fix we're going to need.
I mean, like, there's questions about her running as mayor of New York City, or being senator again, or things like that, or like holding a office. I think is what she wants, and like, of course, president would be like the best one.
Yeah.
I don't think she can do it.
No,
She cannot run for president again because she lost this election. But it's not because she lost this election, it's how she lost this election.
Yeah.
She showed that she isn't in touch with people enough to do it.
It was unfortunately such a public spectacle, and it because the reason she lost was her campaign. And of course it was a Trump too, because a lot of the campaign was mudslinging. But she did not have the right focus in her campaign. She didn't know how to strategically pick out who to talk with and where to focus herself. And
And her vice presidential pick was like a terrible miscalculation.
Yeah.
You know what's my solution to like making sure minorities like me? I'm get a white man who speaks Spanish. Why? Literally, why? Like, even if she chose Sanders as vice president, that probably would have gone a long way in her doing better as well. I would have had some arguments about that, because I think that would have been basically muzzling Sanders.
Yes.
And so I would have had those problems with it. But at least I would have felt like there was an attempt to listen to my concerns. Like, sure, okay, the DNC platform was the most progressive it's ever been, but that's just like a sad thing.
Yeah.
Because, like, we were talking 15 an hour, you can have 12. It's like, you know, like, that's progress. It is. It's definitely a step in the right direction.
It's better than
like,
725.
Did you miss why 15 was important?
Right.
Because, like, I think you did. And it's like, I get it. Like, and yeah, so that shows that she listens. But it also shows how slow to adapt she is. It wasn't until 2012 she came out and said, I support marriage equality.
Yeah. Yeah.
How dare you tell me you believe in happiness for all Americans if it took you that long to say you stand for marriage equality? And I had the same statement to Barack. And I remember having this conversation with my mother, and her saying, well, he probably thought if he said it earlier, he wouldn't get elected. And to which my response was, that's deplorable. Why do we accept that as an excuse?
There is always that question about what it means for a politician to do politics. It's really hard for me to say that this is an acceptable thing. I understand, like, on a pragmatic level, that it's true. I mean, not even that it's true, but that I understand his motivations. I just think the fact those motivations are there in the first place. Number one, that this is the conclusion that he, and not him personally, but all politicians came to. And number two, that there is an environment where this is the conclusion you come to, looking at the motivations involved, is ridiculous.
Yeah.
People are too afraid to accept something different from them. They don't want to take the extra step and say, all right, well, this very intelligent person says something different from what I'm saying. What's the reason for that? Is he justified in saying it? And then in the end say, okay, you don't agree with it. What does that mean? If you don't agree with someone, does that mean you don't elect them? Historically, the answer to that, the American person would say, no. But more recently, since maybe the 70s, people were saying, well, yes, absolutely. Why would I agree? Or why would I elect someone I don't agree with?
Yeah.
As though you agree with anyone on Capitol Hill right now. Here's the sad fact. There is so much going on inside politics that proves how different the opinions of the people in government are from the opinions of people in the lay world. And we don't want to admit that fact as lay people. We want to believe that our senator, our congressman thinks exactly
why they're my congressman or my senator.
Yeah.
They have my support because we get each other.
But the moment he thinks something different from me, I am significantly less likely to vote for him. The moment that somebody else comes up and she echoes more closely what I want, I'm going to vote for her instead. Well, because, why would I vote for someone who disagrees with me?
Mm-hmm.
And it's such an arrogant thing. Like, it's so terrible that we think that way nowadays. It's that if somebody doesn't agree with us, they don't agree with us because there's something wrong with them in some way. Right? Like there's like, oh, if you don't agree with me, it's because you don't understand well enough. Or it's because you hate me and you don't like what I think. It's because you want to hurt me. There's fear and arrogance and pride and envy and all those sorts of things that most religions and most ethical structures in the world tell you are